All right, hello. Thank you for inviting me to participate in your class, Dr. Donnelly, and all of you students. Hopefully my answers will shed some light on who I am and what I do and what you all might be considering when it comes time to find a job after you finish your undergraduate degree. So again, thank you very much. All right, question number one, what is your name and your job title? My name is Adam Betuel, and I am the Director of Conservation for Georgia Audubon. Question two, who is your employer? How would you classify them and where are they located? So kind of jumped the gun there. My employer is Georgia Audubon. Georgia Audubon is a nonprofit, so that's how I would classify them, an environmental nonprofit. And we are based out of Atlanta, Georgia, but we are serving the entire state of Georgia. So you might be familiar with the Audubon name. National Audubon is a big time science and advocacy group here in the United States, bird focused, and they kind of are an umbrella organization for 400 plus associated chapters. And so we are one of these affiliated chapters, but we're kind of unique in that we're staffed, obviously. Many of these Audubon bird clubs you might be familiar with are volunteer run. They meet in the basement of a small church pre-COVID times and share stories about bird watching. So we do provide services for a lot of those people, but we are staffed and we're unique in that we're not employees of National Audubon. So we're affiliated, but separate. We have our own board of directors. We have our own strategic plan, our own membership. So it's a bit confusing, especially when you think that there are other Audubon chapters or Audubon societies like Massachusetts Audubon or New Jersey Audubon, which share the name but are not affiliated with National Audubon. So again, that probably went in one ear and right out the other, but we are a bird-focused nonprofit serving the state of Georgia, currently based out of Atlanta with one staff member, or actually a Sea Grant fellow who was on Jekyll Island who reports to me. Question three, how many years have I worked at this job? I've been with Georgia Audubon, and before that we were the Atlanta Audubon Society. We became Georgia Audubon in August of 2020. So both organizations combined, I've been here in Atlanta about 5.5 years working for this organization and in this position. I actually moved to Georgia for this job, and it's worked out really well for me so far. Question four, what are your primary and favorite job duties? My primary job duties are broadly to help us, Georgia Audubon and Georgians and bird lovers in our state, to build places where birds and people thrive. And we do that through conservation, education, and community engagement. So of course, I'm focused with the conservation programming. And so my duties are somewhat variable depending on what I prioritize or what I can sell to my bosses and to the board of directors. But the big projects that I'm working on right now, the big initiatives, one is to lessen threats to birds across the state. And so one major threat is habitat loss and fragmentation and kind of habitat being weakened by exotic and invasive plants. And so I oversee a lot of our habitat restoration work, removing those unwanted, undesirable plants, planting native plants in their place, doing bird monitoring, and educational opportunities at these locations. Another way that we are addressing direct loss to birds is through bird building work. So between 365 million and 1 billion birds a year die from running into buildings. It's a huge number. It's a scary number. You might be thinking, oh, wow, those stupid birds running into glass, but it's a big problem. And there are many reasons why birds rightfully are confused by glass. And so that effort is getting pretty large now. I manage and oversee volunteers who are actually pounding the pavement looking for birds who have hit buildings, helping them find rehabbers to take injured birds, cataloging all these sightings, all the data. And then now we're doing steps to take action to make Atlanta and hopefully soon beyond Atlanta more bird safe. So we've been retrofitting buildings that have problematic glass by putting film up that will deter collisions. It tells birds, hey, don't fly here. It's not a safe spot, which is a big issue with the glass. We've been starting to work with architects and building designers on new construction. So the first bird-friendly building that we've been a part of here in Atlanta is the Candida Building for Innovative Sustainable Design, which is on Georgia Tech's campus. And then in the not too distant future, I'm hoping to look at policy. What legislation and ordinance opportunities are there to get bird-friendly design standards included, moving forward? How can we, instead of just treating a building at a time, what is some substantial change that we can do to make birds or buildings safer for birds, excuse me. Some other duties I have, I oversee community science monitoring programs. One of those being Climate Watch, where we test National Audubon Society's climate models on how birds might respond to climate change and shift their ranges accordingly. So I oversee community monitoring for that. Some other springtime bird censuses, any sort of monitoring effort. A lot of my work kind of overlaps with education, kind of distilling conservation messaging or natural history of birds, and how can I teach people that so that they care about it and want to do something for birds. So those are a few things that I do. My duties are broadly to educate and empower our membership to care about birds through a conservation lens, and then also to do the scientific monitoring and other steps to make our city and now state safer. And my favorite, I really like the collision work. I think I like it because it's something unique. It's something that is challenging, but I think obtainable to actually get some real changes done. Something I really hope that we can do better at. In the Southeast, there's not a lot of people doing this work, so I've kind of created a little niche for myself to be a leader in the region on this issue. So that's one job duty that I really like, despite the work being somewhat depressing. Another, which is actually not that related to my main job description, but I will mention it because I love doing it, is I get to lead birding travel for Georgia Audubon. So I'm a pretty experienced bird watcher, and I've now become somewhat skilled at leading trips, and people are amazingly interested in traveling with me. And so I lead some regional, some domestic, and then some international bird travel each year. And it's definitely one of my favorite things to do. So that's a nice part of my job as well. All right, question 5. What work-related accomplishments am I most proud of? I'm gonna go back to that bird building collision work. When I started this job 5.5 years ago, there was no conservation director for then Atlanta Audubon, now Georgia Audubon. So pretty much everything that we've done from a conservation standpoint has been overseen by me. And so the growth we've had in that program, from nothing to now dozens of volunteers reporting bird collisions and almost 10 buildings retrofitted with film to be safer for birds, the new construction that I mentioned to you all earlier, working with students at Georgia Tech and other institutes to look at policy, becoming a regional leader. All of that, I am very proud of that and being able to build that. The habitat work that we've done, I was hired because I was able to be hired because we received a habitat restoration grant 6 years ago. That funded a portion of my salary. And since that point, we've now done a number of habitat restoration projects, well over 10. We are now creating our own in-house restoration crew. So if any of you are looking for a job post-graduation, we might have something for you if you like working with native plants and restoration. So just the growth and the direction we have now with our restoration is something that I'm absolutely proud of. So that's a big one for me. Question 6, what credential and or experience does your job require? Well, my job required some basic stuff that you're all gonna probably encounter when you look for a job. If you have an undergraduate degree, if you have some certain experiences, it's always good if you have some of the basic stuff like, Microsoft Office, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, all that stuff. But I think what might be unique for my job, or maybe what I brought to the table that allowed me to stand out, was my ability to communicate science and conservation topics to the public. There are some great scientists out there, much better than myself, but they can't talk about what they're doing to the layperson, and that's a big problem. I think I do a pretty good job at that. So that's one thing that's really good. I'm a big time birder. I spend a ton of time in the field. prior to this job, I was in graduate school, but before that, and even as a grad student, I was very field-based. So I've spent months and months and months out in the woods chasing birds and taking data down in the field. And I got pretty good at again, being in the field and identifying birds, and I'm a pretty good birder. And I think that's been an added component of my resume that wasn't required for this position, but I think worked out really well. But yeah, I think that experience of being a people person, or being able to at least communicate topics around birds and conservation to the layperson, is something that's really benefited me, and something that is kind of required for a nonprofit job. If you go work for a nonprofit, depending on the organization, you're likely going to have to wear a lot of hats. You're going to have to do field work. You're going to have to write grants. You're going to have to talk to your board members, or Jane Doe member who wants to pick your brain about something. Typically nonprofits are smaller and they're not rolling in cash. So the ability to be diverse is something that's really important. And I would encourage you all to be as diverse as possible in your experiences, specifically if you're looking at a nonprofit and not something in academia or in research. What is the near-term job outlook in my field? My field is pretty narrow. I mean, to find someone who's a skilled birder / ornithologist, there aren't a ton of those. I kind of landed where I did because I was a grad student. I was pursuing my PhD. I thought I wanted to be an academic like Dr. Donnelly, and it just wasn't for me. I enjoyed teaching, I enjoyed the research, but I didn't have that commitment needed to really sit at the bench and do all the writing and analysis that was needed. And unfortunately, I realized that, halfway through my doctorate program. So anyways, long story of me saying that it is kind of focused. And if you're going to academia, you have your research kind of route or your teaching route or some combination of the two. If you're looking for an environmental nonprofit, you might have to be somewhat broad, and by that I mean I wanted to do bird stuff. I love birds, I wanted to do birds. You definitely would be better suited if you weren't as singular in your focus as I was. If you're more important about the climate, interested in climate or broader environmental things, you can kind of dabble in water or habitat restoration or birds or whatever it might be. So that's all to say that it is pretty narrow. But birding is popular. There are over 40 million people in the United States who consider themselves bird watchers. A teeny, teeny, teeny silver lining, I hate even using that term, but something that has come from the pandemic is people are turning to nature. They're getting outside more. They're paying attention to what's going on around them at their house and what they can do to be more environmentally friendly at home. So in the near term, that might be a good thing for people prioritizing the environment. I'm not sure how that might work out for the job market, but our membership has gone up in 2020 and now in early 2021. So there aren't just, positions upon positions like you might find in banking or something like that. Finance, I'm not even sure what those markets are like. It is somewhat narrowed and specialized, but I think the job market's relatively strong to the best of my knowledge. All right, next question. What advice would you offer an Oglethorpe student who's interested in your type of employment? So I already said earlier, being diverse in your skill set, I think has helped me quite a bit. If you're looking for a nonprofit, being able to wear those different hats and plug in, again, I help out a lot with our education stuff. I am often looking over our social media stuff, even though it's not something I'm skilled with, but at least I have the bird knowledge. So being diverse and spending time now, if you have it, I know it's tough right now with everything that's going on, but volunteering where you can, or just getting those different experiences, showing that you can work hard. We hire people a lot, or I hire people or interns. And even if someone doesn't have a ton of experience in whatever wildlife specific thing I'm looking for, if they've done a grungy job or been a server or anything, that carries weight in my eyes. So yeah, I think diversity of experiences, if that's something you're able to do, you know, really learning on what might be asked of you if you were to get the job. You know, if you wanted to be an environmental education coordinator for a nonprofit, what does that really mean? And what can you know, how can you prepare yourself? And I think it's really important, especially if you're in the sciences or interested in the natural sciences specifically, but you're not doing a hardcore research route. It's just so important to be able to share your message compellingly to the public, because, you know, I'm in my little bubble and most of my friends or colleagues are birders, and they think like me for environmental causes, but there are a lot more people who are outside of that bubble that we need to pull in if we're going to have real substantial change to our planet and to birds, specifically here in Georgia. So again, being able to talk to people and finding ways to disseminate that information is a valuable trait. And I'll pull back to my time in graduate school. We had to do a presentation course. Once if you were a master's student, twice if you were a PhD student. The first time 15 minutes, the second time 45 minutes. Everyone hated it. It terrified everyone, you know, to have to present in front of your colleagues, your fellow students and the professors. But it's paid off so much for me because I'm now presenting all the time. Sometimes more formally at conferences and sometimes just some birders on tricky warbler identification. But I've become so much more comfortable giving these talks due to the repetitions, but the main things I learned in that course have really paid off. So I know public speaking isn't for everyone, but you can teach yourself some of these things and practice, taking the right classes, looking at Toastmasters. There are ways to get better with speaking. And I'm not claiming that I'm great at it, but at least I'm not as nervous anymore when I do it. And then what is my favorite bird species and why? If you are not a bird watcher, you know that this question, or you wouldn't know that this question is impossible. There are just way too many cool birds to pick one. So I'm gonna make you all listen to me say a couple. One that I really like is the purple martin. The purple martin was the first bird I ever worked on for a field job. The first time I got paid to do bird work, I was working with purple martins in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. They're super cool. They have a really tight bond in history with humans dating back to the Native Americans. They do these amazing roosts during the breeding season where the males will kind of sleep together. And then as the young begin to fly, they'll all join together. And these roosts can number in the hundreds of thousands of birds. So if you're ever on Lake Pontchartrain in Louisiana or down in the Outer Banks during the summer, purple martin roosts are amazing. The white-throated sparrow is a bird that I did my graduate work on. They're really neat because they come in two different color morphs, white and tan. And both males and females exhibit these colors. And there's a difference. You can kind of look at the genotype and the phenotype and the behavior of these birds based off of their head color and how they mate disassortatively. I could talk about this forever. A lot of this might be going over your head, but white-throated sparrows, super cool, and they have a lot going on behind what looks like a relatively boring brownish bird. And then just to name a couple really cool ones that I've seen, the horned guan is my all-time #1 bird sighting at this point. It's this ancient species that only lives on high volcanic peaks of Guatemala and Mexico. They look like they have a googly eye and a pink fleshy horn coming out of their top. Just unreal bird. That is my favorite sighting. Green-headed tanager. I'm just picking that one because it's gorgeous and it's so cool. The white-winged nightjar. I did a summer in Paraguay doing field work, and the white-winged nightjar is a critically endangered bird, only known from about 5 breeding locations. And so I've seen those down in the Cerrado habitat of Paraguay, roosting on termite mounds. So many cool birds. American woodcocks is another one I have to mention. So I think that's the end of my questions. So again, my name is Adam. I'm the Director of Conservation at Georgia Audubon, and I'm just trying to do my best to help birds across our state through monitoring, through research, through community science, through education. And you know, there's a lot of exciting stuff out there in the nonprofit world. You're not gonna get rich, but you definitely can make a living, and hopefully you're doing it because it's a passion of yours and fun for you. I'm here. Dr. Donnelly has my contact information if anyone would like to follow up with questions or more info about life at a nonprofit, or just thinking outside maybe some of the traditional ways people work in research or in conservation. So I hope this was helpful, and thank you. And yeah, have a good one.